Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Behind the Screen. Apologies for my appearance today. I'm actually a little bit under the weather and have been for a few days now, but I definitely wanted to make sure that I took time to get a video up for you guys. Many thanks to all of our new viewers. I know that there are a bunch of you who have started watching this channel because of this segment that I do on Thursdays. Thanks, that's awesome. I did have a topic that I wanted to talk about today, but first I also want to give a shout out to my D&D Alpha Mods group. You guys are awesome. I kind of got called out by my friends last week when we played because I hadn't mentioned them or the game on this recently, and so the game is going really well. I'm in a bunch of campaigns right now, but this one is especially fun. It's the one that I'm actually playing on Roll20 and online with a bunch of friends from all over the world. And if you didn't catch the other videos, at first I didn't like Roll20 and playing online because there wasn't a interactive experience or part of it. And now that we're using cams, it's so much better. And we played for like 4.5 hours the other night, and we didn't have a single combat encounter. It was all RP, it was all role-playing, all story progression. And many thanks to our DM, Greg, who stayed up till like 3 in the morning in Scotland playing with us. So thanks, Greg. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today we are actually talking about tracking resources. So when I first started playing and DMing D&D, tracking resources sort of felt like a major waste of time to me. It slowed me down to like the point of I didn't understand the point of counting every arrow that you would shoot or dagger that you might throw. It kind of seemed like a time suck to mark down the number of rations that I had in my bag, and it felt really silly to note how many ball bearings or caltrops that I had dropped on the ground. Basically, it just felt like micromanagement and sort of like an antiquated system that seemed to distract from actually playing the game. I know there are actually a lot of people who probably feel the same way, and so why am I talking about this today? Because, yeah, who needs to track arrows if you have them available to you? You can go buy them in town if your DM is like, hey, you're probably running low on arrows. Or you don't really need to worry about eating things if you're eating at inns, like you don't need to track your rations. Or like in one of my games, making sure that you have enough insect salve because you bought that in Port Nyanzaru before heading into the jungles of Chult. You know, you'll be fine. You're a Boy Scout, you're prepared, right? Well, all of these items really just seem like that. They're just small items that don't really need to be tracked. The tracking of resources really can seem sort of like the nitpicking of some sort of anal retentive nerd, which I kind of am. But as I started to play more and more, and as I started to DM more and more, I actually sort of started to change my opinion on this. I started to see sort of what the importance might be of tracking these things. Sure, arrows, that's fine. You can probably find more arrows, or you can say, I'm gonna go around and pick my arrows up to the DM if you're playing. But what if they're +1 arrows? And that actually is what made me pause and start thinking about this. So in the game that I'm playing, the Tomb of Annihilation campaign that I'm in right now, I'm playing a ranger. And I have a very limited supply of +1 arrows. As a ranger, obviously I'm primarily using my bow and arrow. So while my very kind and generous and magnanimous DM has never asked that I track my arrows, I've actually been keeping a very careful tally of how often I use my limited supply of +1 arrows. Because they do more stuff and they potentially give me an edge, I've been very thoughtful because I don't want my DM to come to me and say, hey, Emma, how many of those arrows do you have left? You've been using a lot of them. Do you really have enough for this final battle? So I would hate to put myself in a situation where he's like, yeah, you're probably out of them. I'd rather be able to tell him, I have 17 left, and have him go, okay, cool, you've been counting? Great, that's perfect. They are sort of like, I literally at the end of every session, I'll sit and I'll tally them on my sheet, and it's like, my precious. I will hold on to them and just sort of wait for the opportune moment, or the moment that feels the most absolutely right to use them. So as I'm tracking these +1 arrows, I've started to think about, sure, I'm tracking these special arrows. Why am I not tracking my regular arrows too? We are technically in the jungles of Tolk. Where am I buying more arrows? And besides, they're just arrows, just like my +1. They do damage. Sure, it's less, but they're basically the same thing. What makes my +1 arrows so precious to me versus these other regular arrows? So that was kind of what got me into this thought process, into this like moment of realization of what makes these things so different and why would I track one and not the other. And that was when I really started thinking about it, and I realized every single class has to track resources, whether that's spell slots for magic users, or let's say you're a barbarian, you're probably tracking rages per day, or some sort of cleric. Yes, you have spells, but like channel divinity, you can only do a certain number of times. Everyone has to track things. It's a pencil and paper game, right? So like, that's the whole point. We're writing things down on a piece of paper and creating a story together. So why is there sort of this thought process in my mind that I don't need to track arrows, or ammunition in general? So you could be a rogue and you could be throwing daggers, whatever it is, whatever ranged ammunition you have. If you're a gunslinger, you have bullets, you know, that sort of thing. We should be tracking this ammunition just as if we had spell slots and we were tracking spells. Also, why aren't DMs making sure that players are tracking these things? So I went from my player brain to my DM brain, and I started thinking about it, and I said, okay, if I start making my players do this, how does this change the game? Potentially it makes for really intense storylines, especially if the ranger runs out of arrows right in the middle of a big fight, or in a less potentially dangerous situation, what if you run out of insect repellent in the middle of the Cholton rainforest? Can you imagine the bug-related story arcs that you could develop? Yeah, I can. So there's sort of like a built-in treasure trove of opportunities when you start thinking about having players track resources and what happens when you run out of them. Now, that's sort of a cause and effect situation. And while I feel like I potentially have been missing out on these things, I also had promised my players at the beginning of the game that I wouldn't be worried. As a DM, I told them when we started this campaign that we're in right now, last August, I said, yeah, don't worry about ammunition. It's fine. Not a big deal. So while I am the DM and I can change my mind, it is my world after all. I can do what I want. Everyone dies. No. But I also made a promise. I made sort of a promise to my players that they wouldn't have to do this. And why would I go back on it? I want to stick to my word. If I start changing the rules in the middle of the campaign, then they're not going to trust me for the other things that I've said. I mean, they already had issues when we decided to switch to Xanathars, or to add in Xanathar's Guide, and then I had everyone remake their characters in D&D Beyond so that I had digital character sheets for everyone. That they could get over. That was like a change, but it didn't affect the game. This actually would potentially affect the game. So I've been putting a lot of thought into it, and I'm still not entirely sure that I would want my players to actually track things. I'm honestly on the fence about it. I think that it kind of comes down to what kind of game you, as the DM, want to play with your players. Do you have a bunch of players who are bookkeepers, who are really interested in the minutia of the game? Are they the type of players who walk into a tavern and they want to know exactly how much the ale costs versus the wine versus, like, is there a meal deal? Like, are they going to nickel and dime their way through the game? If so, you might want to have them track ammunition and other resources because they might enjoy it. Or do you have players who are there to sort of experience a story and go on an adventure and focus on role-playing and generally are trying to have a good time? Because as much as I would love to have an opportunity to add that little extra threat into a game of, are you almost out of ammo? I don't know how much that would really add to the game in the long run. It's, again, not going to affect the story arc in a way, unless a character dies. It's not going to affect a story arc in a way that is going to drastically shift the tone. So I guess what I'm saying is I wouldn't change it on my players that I'm currently in, but I would seriously consider making players in future campaigns at least track magical and maybe non-magical ammunition. This whole conversation, honestly, is to say that I'm still on the fence about this. I know lots of people have opinions, and I want you guys to comment down below because I want to know all of your pros and cons. I feel like I'm in freaking high school again or college where I'm making pro and con lists of why I want to do something or not do something. It is exactly that. I don't know if I should have my players track their resources that way. Do I care? Am I going to be checking their sheets? Am I going to be going back and double checking and saying, nope, you killed 7 goblins this time, but I noted that you only took 6 arrows off. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to trust them. But at the same time, is that what they want to be doing with their free time? Is writing down how many arrows they used. Arrows is just an easy example. Obviously, there are other types of ammunition you can track. So, anyway, feel free to comment below. Let me know what you think. Do you make your characters track their resources? Are there particular resources they do have to track or that they don't have to track? Like, I definitely make my players track their healing potions, but that's kind of like a major thing to track. It's a little different than 40 arrows in a quiver. And what do you suggest that I do? Do you have food for thought that you want to add to the conversation? Feel free to put those down in the comments below. And I think that's going to be it today, guys. Again, apologies, under the weather, just a lot going on. Plenty more to come. If you have a topic that you'd like me to think about, to talk about in a future episode, let me know. I'm also always available on Twitter @ConditionedNerd. I love chatting with people, especially about D&D. And I guess that's going to be it. So don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and support us on Patreon if you are so inclined. And I'll see you guys on the next adventure. Bye!